Welcome back. Beyond the Box Score, Mastering Matchups, Week 9. I got it right, Ryan. I definitely do know which week we're in. I was telling Ryan before we started, been sick. I've got some stuff going on behind the scenes that have had me a little bit distracted here this week, but I think we're kind of rounding into form. It was good to read through Ryan's notes and see that a lot of the matchup things that he had noted were reflected in my rankings. It's funny, Ryan, how we're in this cycle week to week, and if I just miss like a day or two, I feel so freaking behind on like just all the NFL news cycle and everything, just little shifts in the usage and everything. So if y'all ever feel like that, that's what our guy Ryan Heath is here for, because he does not seem to miss a beat. So Ryan, I want to first check and see how you're doing. We've got Halloween weekend coming up. Do you have any plans you're excited for? How are we feeling headed into week 9?
Yeah, doing great, man. For Halloween, I don't have any big plans this weekend. I did like a big costume party a couple weeks ago with like some college friends. That was really fun. But this weekend, probably just chilling. Have one friend that's in the area. We might go out and get a drink or two or something. But nothing huge planned really. I do enjoy Halloween, but it's just I don't know. It's not the same as when I was like in college, or obviously when I probably in college was when Halloween was the most fun, honestly, even more so than when I was a kid. But yeah, nowadays it's just kind of weird.
I've kind of regressed back to like true like being a kid with Halloween. I used to be into more of the party scene and stuff, and like this year I'm going with my niece and my nephew. They're both dressing up as bugs, and I'm dressing up as a bug catcher from Pokemon. Does that mean anything to you,
That
Ryan?
is that is amazing. I'm a huge Pokemon fan,
Awesome. Heck
Pokemon
yeah.
head. I've been playing a bunch of Legends ZA the last couple weeks. Anytime I've had spare time around football, so yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
I'm glad that I found somebody who appreciates it, because I think everybody else is just gonna be like, "Why are you in short shorts and a tank top? It's 40, it's 45 degrees out. What the heck's wrong with you?" Alrighty, we've got a lot of matchups to dig into today. A lot of cool, interesting start sit decisions to dig into today. So I'm just going to start by throwing up my rankings. Really, all the positions were interesting to me as I went through the rankings this week. There's a bunch of games that could go like either direction. I saw in your notes that Joe Flacco might not play. I hope that's not the case. Of course, that's been extremely fun for us for fantasy. So here's my QB rankings. We'll start here. I think that Jaden Daniels will move up the expert consensus rankings. If you can see on the screen here, the far right, the plus and minuses there like designate how high I am relative to consensus in terms of the experts that rank on Fantasy Pros. And so like Jackson Dart stands out as the guy who I'm the highest on relative to consensus. I think we saw last week with that San Francisco defense that the week prior was probably the aberration, and they just don't really have the talent to keep this up over a larger sample size. So I feel pretty good about Dart, given how much he's running. I'm fine going back to Jaden unless you have any thoughts. Obviously, that's a tough matchup against Seattle. Does anything stand out to you here when you look at these QB rankings?
Yeah, I think you have him ranked appropriately conservatively. I will say I don't think they would be letting him play if he wasn't close to 100%. Just a week ago, like Adam Schefter was saying that he didn't think Daniels would play in week 9 just because they were being extremely cautious, really didn't want him to re aggravate anything again. So yeah, if he's out there, I think, yeah, lock him in as a top 10 option. Would definitely start him over all of these guys. And yeah, with the matchup, I think it makes sense to lean Dart over him.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on Caleb Williams or the matchup here for the Bears against Cincinnati? The Bengals defense has really struggled. I'm a little bit nervous to use Caleb. I think it probably sets up better for the ground game. We'll get to the running backs after this. But do you have any thoughts on him in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears have really leaned into the run game, especially after the bye, but really over their last 5 games, and especially whenever they've been able to. They're probably going to be able to this week. I think the spread is at 3.5 points now. Yeah, Bengals, amazing matchup for opposing quarterbacks, but just as amazing for opposing running backs. Yeah, top 4 for quarterbacks, the best for running backs at this point. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I might move Caleb below like a Kyler or a Stafford personally. But it's really just like, how much do you think they're going to throw the ball? And I lean toward probably not much, especially if we don't get Flacco and this game doesn't like completely go off, because I don't think that the Jake Browning Bengals are kind of pushing teams in the way that the Flacco Bengals are.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely move down if Flacco doesn't play. So I've got Flacco at QB 16. I've got Caleb Williams at QB 10. I know Flacco's been a lot better than that lately. I don't know if we can just count on 3 touchdowns every single game. As we move down the ranks, you can see these if you're watching on YouTube. If not, if you're listening, you can find my rankings in the FFT newsletter. I'll send those out on Thursday and then again on Sunday. A couple guys down here that are interesting to me playing against each other. That's Bo Nix and CJ Stroud. These two have been putting up some usable performances here and there, especially Nix has flashed some upside, but the game environment looks really, really gross. I want to say it's like a 39.5 point over under, which is the lowest this week by far. Did you have any matchup specific stuff here? Like Stroud and the Texans offensive line having to deal with this Denver defense?
Yeah, I just have zero interest in Stroud and zero interest in starting any Texan outside of Nico Collins, and even that I'm a little nervous about. So the Broncos are blitzing at the 4th highest rate this year. CJ Stroud against the blitz, I'm just going to read it off. 3.4 adjusted net yards per attempt, a 13% sack rate, 0.27 fantasy points per dropback. That's 53% less efficient against the blitz than on all other dropbacks. All of those marks rank bottom 6 among QBs in the NFL against the blitz. This makes sense. I have seen the Texans offensive line play. I don't think it's going to be very pretty against the Broncos this week. So yeah, Stroud, I think you have appropriately buried. I might even take the risk on like a JJ McCarthy or a Michael Penix over him in Superflex. Like when we get to the Nico Collins ranking, this might also be like interesting to discuss.
Yeah, I was curious what you thought, because obviously they're missing their top corner there, but I still don't want to go there with really any of the Texans. I was curious if maybe J.J. McCarthy would be a better play for you, but Stroud is kind of scrambling too, so those two actually profile pretty similarly to me. The only quarterbacks I have below Stroud and Nix are J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Geno Smith, Cam Ward, Bryce Young, and Tyler Shuck. All right, let's move over to running back. Same guys at the top. I'm very high on Derrick Henry. Do you have any Thursday night thoughts you want to throw out for the people?
I not even just specific to Thursday night, but yeah, you should be very high on Derrick Henry. He has been the RB3 by expected fantasy points per game over the past 2 weeks. The reason for that is very simply the Ravens have only trailed by multiple scores on 3 of their drives over the past 2 games. They were doing that on, I think it was 14 of their 20 drives over the previous 2 when Henry was like doing nothing. Yeah, we do this thing every year where we just kind of forget how game script sensitive Derrick Henry is. Getting Lamar back, the Ravens are like 5 or more point favorites in like, I want to say 7 of their next 9 games or something like that. So yeah, Henry is pretty close to like a top 6, top 7 running back for me rest of season. And yeah, you have him ranked appropriately highly here.
Yes, I've got Henry at 3, Devon Achane at 4, Jahmyr Gibbs at 5. I saw you pose the question to me about David Montgomery. You had some interesting notes on Montgomery and how the Lions divvy up their backfield when playing with a lead, which they're definitely expected to play with a massive lead in this spot. So why don't you give us those notes and I'll show you where I've got Monty.
Yeah, so it's an 8.5 point spread, the Lions over the Vikings right now. And just looking at the percentage of backfield carries and the percentage of the backfield's expected fantasy points, so including rushes, goal line carries, targets, all of that. With Jahmyr Gibbs, when the Lions are either trailing or leading by a score or less, he's at 65% of the carries, 66% of the expected fantasy points. But when the Lions are leading by 9 or more points, it's Montgomery at 54% of the carries, 58% of the expected fantasy points. So in some games, like last game, this kind of resulted in Montgomery doesn't really play that much until like the final drive or two, and he like salts the game away. And that's like not a huge deal for fantasy, like especially if Jahmyr Gibbs is the one that's breaking off 70-yard runs and scoring to get them up to that like commanding position. But it is something to think about going against JJ McCarthy, who looked very up and down in like the game and a half we saw him. Like if this game is not competitive early on, it could very much be like a David Montgomery getting 60 to 65% of the work on the ground. So yeah, I'm just was kind of interested how you would want to handle that in your rankings. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to be below consensus on Montgomery.
I know. I saw that I was, and I don't want to be. But then again, I don't know who to move him ahead of. The three players that I see here, the consensus has him ahead of that I don't, are Kareem Hunt, Bam Knight against the Cowboys, and Ramondre Stevenson. I'm way higher than consensus on Ramondre Stevenson, which is not really where I want to be. What do you think about those three?
Well, so Ramondre didn't practice yesterday,
Right.
so that might bail you out of that one. Bam Knight, and sorry, who was the first one you said?
Kareem Hunt.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I like all three of those
Right.
over Montgomery, I think. I mean, Hunt and Montgomery are probably pretty similar plays. I lean toward the higher game total, of course, so would lean Hunt. Yeah, I mean, I think I would put him over ETN, just to continue our continue our Vishal Tootin agenda here.
Yeah.
Dowdle, I think, could just have like a 70% opportunity share this week. That's kind of the coach speak we've been hearing that's been hinting at. So I wouldn't move Montgomery over Dowdle, but yeah, I think you could get him over ETN.
All right. So yeah, I do think he's a good start, if need be. But there's a lot of good starts at running back is basically where I'm at. Because like I think Zach Charbonnet is a pretty similar type of start and another pretty good one at the running back position. So similar to the notes that you gave with Montgomery, I saw that you had something on Kamani Vidal that was pretty cool. I like splitting it the way that you did. I've got Vidal up at running back 12, which is where consensus has him, which is pretty dang cool to see this, round 6 guy, I believe, who seemed like he was pretty much dead in the water this offseason, and he's all the way up to being a top 12 fantasy running back. So what are your Vidal notes?
Yeah, so the spread right now for the Packers over the Titans is 9.5 points. And I know that people kind of think Vidal is like maybe this like receiving back, smaller type of faster type of guy, but with how he's been used, which is just really as an every down bell cow or close to it, he's actually averaged 64% more fantasy points per snap while leading than on plays that the Chargers have been trailing or tied this year. And when you compare that to other running backs, just to see how game script sensitive are they, how much do they benefit from being ahead, that 64% number is very similar to guys like Ashton Genty and James Cook, which, for those who don't know, those are two of the most game script sensitive running backs. So yeah, all of that is just like more reason to pump up Kamani Vidal to me. Yeah, it's like hard to have him higher than you have him, I think. I would give him the lean over Swift just because we have seen back-to-back weeks where Swift is more at like a 60-40 type of split with Kyle Monangai, and Vidal has been far above that, getting most of the relevant backfield work. I would say the Titans are less likely to surprise the Chargers than the Bengals are to surprise the Bears with game script. So I would probably flip them, but yeah, I don't think you can get him ahead of a Cook or ahead of a Javonte.
So running back 3 in XFP, expected fantasy points in week 8 per the fantasy points data suite is Kamani Vidal. I think it makes sense to be really high on him this week. And I like the way that you broke it down where you said 64% more efficient on a per snap basis when playing with a lead. So that's a pretty interesting way to think about that. I think that makes sense comparing him to James Cook in that way, Ashton Genty in that way. Speaking of Ashton Genty, I continue to be a little bit lower than consensus. I know it's been tough for the Ginty drafters. I've got him and Jalen Warren basically identical in my mind. Both of them looking at games where they're probably going to be losing, but both of them playing at home, so could be more neutral. So I've got them sandwiched in between like Kareem Hunt, Rico Dowdle, and those guys we just talked about. But below Bam Knight, Chase Brown could have a big game here, has been playing well as of late. Tyrone Tracy stepping in to make a start. These are the RB2s, the RB2 landscape for this week. Does that all sound about right to you?
Pretty much, yeah. I think like the matchup really elevates Chase Brown for me, and I also think if it is Jake Browning that the Bengals are going to try to attack via Chase Brown first, most likely. But yeah, the Bears still top 3 in adjusted yards before contact per attempt allowed, so being pretty high on him makes sense to me. I would probably flip Genty and Warren just because I have way more faith in Genty to break off like a big play and like make his week in that way than I do in Jalen Warren. I love Jalen Warren. He's by the way, once again, he's at the top of the NFL in yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt, all the like nerd charted stats. He's still looking amazing in them.
I love that. Yeah, like in my mind, they're like the same player right now, effectively, which is so ridiculous because Warren's a UDFA and this is like the best running back prospect we've had in so long. But like they both are just amazing at making something out of nothing. But to your point, Inti has more of the breakaway speed to create like instead of a wow, that was an amazing 8-yard run. It's like, oh gosh, that turned into a freaking touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I would probably flip them, but I agree with how you're thinking about it, where they're in pretty similar spots.
I love these guys. I hope that their offensive environments get better. All right. One more running back note from our guy Ryan here, and that's about the Rams. So I have Kyren Williams pretty high. If you look at the implied totals for this week, the Rams sit at the very top, tied with the Packers and the Ravens, implied for 29 points from Vegas. And at the very bottom, you'll find the New Orleans Saints at 14.5. So one of the widest spreads that you'll see all year. So Kyren could get a lot of touchdowns, but he's also like kind of a risky play because if the touchdowns don't go to him, he might be sitting out at the end of the game, which brings us to Blake Corum. What's your Blake Corum note?
Yeah, so I'm a massive Kyren Williams hater. I don't even have that much particular love for Blake Corum, but the people should know I'm one of the big Kyren Williams haters. So take anything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but the Rams being 14-point favorites, everybody, of course, understandably this week is like, yeah, Kyren Williams week. That's what we're doing. But in their game in London, where they were blowing out the Jaguars 35-7, Blake Corum outcarried Kyren Williams 10-5 in the second half. And Williams was traditionally a very game script sensitive running back that would benefit when the Rams were ahead and could kind of control the game. But that's just not how the Rams have been playing this year. Across 4 games, the Rams have won by 7 or more points. Williams is at just 12.4 fantasy points per game this year. The only time he's gone over 20 was actually in that overtime loss to the 49ers where Corum fumbled like on the second or third drive and just didn't play the rest of the game. So to me, if that's your only scenario where Kyren is posting a ceiling game, which is Corum fumbles early and it's like a back and forth shootout that goes to overtime, then I'm just like not really that interested in Kyren Williams as a fantasy asset because yeah, if he's getting pulled in blowouts, or not even really in blowouts, like when they're up multiple scores, if he's not getting all of that work to like salt the game away, and if the Rams are getting up by throwing the ball, which understandably so with the receivers they have, then like what's the point of Kyren Williams? So I do think where you have Corum here is appropriate because we've seen Emmanuel Wilson, we've seen Ollie Gordon become more involved on the ground in like a 30-40% carry share type of way the last couple of weeks. Corum has been around that any week he hasn't fumbled, essentially. Could be even higher than that if the Rams do end up being very ahead. So I might even put him above the Wilsons and the Gordons just based on the offensive environment.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Corum has played really well this year. So yeah, this range right here is interesting. Just behind, Tyjae Spears will be higher depending on what happens with the Tony Pollard news, but just behind like Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Corey Krosky, Merritt, Kyle Monangai. I've got a group of backup running backs that could see more work this week for one reason or another, and also could, I think, maybe pop off in a good matchup. And that's Emmanuel Wilson for the Packers, Ollie Gordon for the Dolphins, Blake Corum, and then Bashal Tutin, of course. We're hoping for more work out of the bye. I have all of them ahead of Chuba Hubbard. I have them ahead of Jordan Mason, whose role scaled back in a big way, especially when playing from behind, and that's what we're expecting this week. I have them ahead of R.J. Harvey, Brashard Smith, Travion Henderson. We'll see what happens with Ramondre Stevenson. So those are some interesting names for you to consider that might be available on your waiver wire. Would you move Woody Marks behind any of those guys? I know you're worried about the Texans.
Yeah, probably. Well, I'm worried about the Texans. I'm also worried about the Titans. I'm worried about every team that's here, to be fair.
Corum ahead of him?
I don't think I would. I think it's very likely Marks gets more touches than Corum this week.
Any Brashard Smith thoughts? People think maybe he should be higher with no Isaiah Pacheco.
So I will put it at like a 75% chance that Brashard Smith's role doesn't change at all.
That's how I feel.
So this is not really a matchup thing, but like if you'll indulge me on like a usage take for a minute that I wrote about extensively in this week's Everything report on Fantasy Points, the Chiefs let Brashard Smith be like the primary early down runner in the fourth quarter against the Raiders a couple weeks ago, and they were blowing them out. And to be fair, this was with the backup offensive line. It was with Gardner Minshew on the field. This was not like the real starters or anything like that. But he went for like 2.5 yards per carry on 10 touches when he did that. So to me, that was like, hey, Brashard Smith, this is like your tryout to be a real running back that is getting like real designed rushing rather than just designed receiving work. And I don't know that he really passed that test. So I'll be interested to track if the Chiefs elevate like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire from the practice squad potentially. But yeah, I think most likely Hunt is just going to get all the work on the ground and all of the goal line work. Smith will continue to be in like this design target role which went away completely last week just based on game flow and game script and them using Rashee Rice. So even that is like not a guaranteed thing. So yeah, I don't think you need to be thinking about Brashard Smith as anything other than like a back of the bench stash right now.
I hope Ryan is wrong, because that would be fun. But as a Chiefs fan who watches all the games, it does seem that they view Brashard Smith as more of like an offensive weapon. They use him a lot in motion, out of the slot, out wide even. And I think that's probably going to continue to scale back as Rice gets more and more integrated into the offense. They've got a lot of different receivers they can rotate in right now. I think he'll have his packages, but I don't think he's going to be using the backfield all that much. So I don't know if an Isaiah Pacheco injury really affects him that much. But I hope he's wrong. I think Brashard Smith is kind of a dog. I will push back a little bit on the efficacy of him as a rusher. I think that he could be good, but we'll see. Alrighty, let's shift back to our rankings here. I want to work through some wide receiver ranks. So I have Zay Flowers extremely high against the Dolphins. I know that they've actually done a decent job if you look at like fantasy numbers against passing games. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that just because it's so easy to run on this team? Or do you feel pretty good about going back to the Baltimore players here in the pass game?
Yeah, I do think it's mostly just it's very easy to run on this team type of thing. So most teams do. And that could be what the Ravens do in Lamar's first game back. But it could also be like, hey, we're back and we're going to hang 35 points on the Dolphins because we can. That would also not surprise me with them. What's their record? Are they one and 6 right now? 2-5, something like that. So
I believe it's 2-5 after last week, but I could be wrong. I've got up here. This is also free, right, Ryan? The weekly reports here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all of these weekly reports are completely free. I also did a video over on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel, kind of going over all of these weekly reports a week or so ago. If you guys want any like tips or like ways to use some of the filters, that's a good place to go look.
Very cool. Yeah, go check that out. Find that if you want to learn more about it. So yeah, you see the Dolphins here at the bottom. Only the Bills have had a higher run rate over expectation or a lower pass rate over expectation, meaning the teams choose to run against these defenses. But I do think that Zay Flowers still is a really solid start here. Could could make his week with just one play, and we've seen the volume just like shift over to him in a massive way. All right, nothing else really at the top that stood out to me. You can shout out anything if you see.
Oh, do you want to talk about Justin Jefferson and like Amik Robertson? Or is anybody even aware of this? Is this like a sicko thing that I only remember from week 18?
Give it to us.
Okay, so Amik Robinson, corner on the Lions, has been guarding Justin Jefferson since high school, apparently. I don't like fully know all the lore here, but they let him shadow Jefferson in week 18 of last year. Jefferson only scored 8.4 PPR points. But for those who don't remember that game, that was like the worst game that I've seen Sam Darnold play in like the last 3 years, probably. Like it was like peak like rookie Jets Darnold was what he looked like in that game. Was just missing guys. It was just not a good performance from Sam Darnold. So I think there's been some discussion of like, is Jefferson a good play? I think he is a good play. He is clearly the Vikings' most targeted receiver against man coverage. Target per out run goes up to 0.3 against man, which the Lions play a lot of. Addison's, Hawkinson's per route numbers all go down against man. So I think Jefferson is a solid play. I understand being a little scared of JJ McCarthy. I think you have him appropriately ranked here. Honestly, I'd probably put him over like a George Pickens, maybe over Devontae Adams as well. But yeah, there's like some Justin Jefferson fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now that I just thought was worth saying I'm not really buying into. I think he's probably fine.
Okay, good note. Yeah, I'm just taking kind of a cautious approach with the passing game here. I'm worried that it could be a like disaster type game where it's like, oh wow, we have to go to Brosmer or whatever, and it's just like awful. We produced 150 passing yards this week. Where I just feel a lot more confident with these game environments, with the Rams and the Cowboys. And I mean, basically every team, every player ranked above him, it's like they're other than I guess Cincinnati maybe, but if Flacco plays, they're projected for 25 plus points, and then you find the Vikings at the very, very bottom of the league. So to me, this is about as high as I could push him. He hasn't really pushed up into this top 10 range very often at all this year. And I think that's just kind of a reflection of where we're at with the offense. But yeah, I've got Jefferson at 11, Drake London just behind him, and then you find Jalen Waddle, and then we get into these mid-range wide receiver twos where you'll find Nico Collins is wide receiver 18, ahead of T. Higgins, ahead of Tedero McMillan, which hurts my heart, of course, ahead of Travis Hunter, who I do have ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. This week as they make the return from the bye. So how's that all look to you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I would honestly probably get even lower on T. Higgins. Maybe I'm just like operating from I don't think Flacco's playing, and maybe this is like an appropriate ranking for him if he does. But even if that's the case, the Bears have been very tough actually against outside wide receivers this year. The fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points, -8 compared to any other game for a receiver on average. And they funneled everything into the slot. That has been both with Kyler Gordon in and out. I know there was some criticism of that take.
And then he didn't even play
last week. Then he didn't even play. Sorry. Now he's on IR. But for the record, the Bears were still top 5 in slot yards per game allowed, even with Kyler Gordon on the field in week 6 and 7. I did go back and look at that because I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. But yeah, regardless, T. Higgins playing pretty much exclusively on the outside. He has the toughest matchup of any Bengals receiver in that sense. So I'd be happy to push like a Tedero McMillan above him. The Packers have actually been pretty vulnerable to outside receivers over the past 5 weeks. Yeah, I don't know if I can quite get there with Travis Hunter yet, but I am very excited. I don't know if you have talked about him this week or want to, but yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot, but it's mostly speculative. So unless you have something specific on the matchup that you wanted to throw in, then I don't think we need to right now. I'm curious
nothing on the matchup. I'm just like sitting here looking at my notes of like, Brian Thomas has been a little better against cover 3, but like I really want to have a Travis Hunter take. There really isn't one to give on the matchup, but yeah, I'm pretty excited.
I'm curious if you think there's any reason why Green Bay would be a good spot for perimeter receivers, because schematically it doesn't really seem that way, right?
It's pretty much all been like like shallow stuff. So
Yeah.
it could I haven't gone back and like looked at each individual performance to see if it's more like PPR scam type of stuff or if it's like actually them getting beat downfield. But yeah, that was like just a number that jumped out to me and surprised me this week.
Yeah. So Ryan is saying that the Packers have struggled against perimeter receivers, which is where T-Mac is mostly doing his work. And he's coming off his best game from a usage standpoint. I watched every route last week. The guy is so freaking good. It could have been an
Yeah.
even bigger game. Where I'm at, which is still 2 spots above consensus, but is a little bit nervous here, is that they play so much too high safety looks, so much zone coverage. I think that it's better when you get him isolated and where you can just be a route winner against one guy, because he's most of the time he's going to win in those scenarios. I don't know if we'll get as much of that. He can still win versus zone. I think he's better against zone than people might realize and more than the data might suggest. But the main thing is that Green Bay can just get pressure on the quarterback so freaking fast. And that scares me. That's where I'm at with this. It's just like, Carolina's offensive line has been abysmal lately. And so I'm just pretty nervous about him in this spot. Like basically I see him really similarly to Nico Collins. Okay, Juwan Jennings. I really like this spot for Juwan Jennings. You'll see he's 8 spots above consensus. It seems like he's getting healthier, and we know what he can do when he's healthy. And I think this might be a spot where San Francisco bounces back and he just kind of bullies these Giants secondary defenders. But you had a schematic note you like too, right?
Yeah, so first I want to say that drop was awful last week. I was very mad. I like literally texted the words to a friend, I'm done with Juwan Jennings, and now I'm touting him this week. So that's where we're at with Juwan Jennings. But yeah, Giants play the second most man coverage in the NFL. Jennings has a 30% target share and a 35% target per route run rate against man this year. When you just look at this 49ers receiving core, he is the only one who can win against man. Like CMC and Kittle, both amazing players, have historically done a lot of their damage more against zone coverage. Additionally, Giants allowing the 4th most receiving yards per game to the deep ball, 20 or more yards downfield. Jennings is really the only one who's been getting downfield, getting air yards the last couple of games. He's right even with CMC in terms of target share over the past 2 weeks. So I really like this spot for Jennings. I would love this spot for Ricky Pearsall. If we were getting him, it would be like way better. He also has been like a much better man beater this year. But yeah, I'll take what we can get with Jennings. He's really cheap in DFS too. He's like 4K or something like that. So a nice little value there as well that I think has some upside. And yeah, I agree with this ranking. I would definitely want him over Cortland Sutton in that game environment. Wan'Dale Robinson has just as good of a matchup. The 49ers also have been the most vulnerable to the slot this year. I almost want to push them both above like the Worthies and the Shakirs. I'm curious kind of what your thoughts on this game are with the Chiefs and Bills, and like, are there any of these receivers that you have like an actual take on? Because I wish I did, and I honestly don't.
Yeah, so I'll address that, and then we'll hit our first break because I forgot entirely about taking breaks because my brain is just broken right now. So Worthy, this is a dumb anecdotal note, but like I feel like they legitimately tried to get Worthy going more against the Bills, and it's just this huge blow up spot where it could be back and forth Mahomes, Josh Allen. I just think that there's like such massive upside that I didn't want to be low on him. I also
is it Worthy against the Bills because like the Bills traded the pick away? Is that okay? Yep. Just
like
for non-Bills and Chiefs fans, you guys fight about that a lot, right?
Yes, I feel like both sides, like Keon Coleman and Worthy, like both get more looks. I should dig into that before talking about it and get the actual numbers. But like just as somebody who watches the Chiefs Bills game, it seems like every year we have it. It does feel like he gets favored in those spots. He's come close to making some plays the last few games. Like I feel like he's had a decent enough floor in terms of like first 3 targets and stuff like that. He's still involved in the offense. Like he's more of the downfield guy now with Rice. He's not the clear focal point, but he's still involved. And I feel like he's looked healthier too lately. And I wonder if maybe this is a spot where we see him get some looks in the red zone and stuff like that. Also, man, like watching the Bills against the Panthers film, like they're struggling in this. I mean, they're kind of struggling everywhere, but like Jalen Coker, obviously I love Jalen Coker, but like open all the time. Tedder McMillan open all the time. I'm seeing Xavier Leggett out here winning reps, pretty repeatedly winning reps and getting open. And it's like, I think Worthy could definitely pop off in this game, in a game that could produce 60 points. So that's basically where I'm at with him.
I love
Shakir,
that. I'm gonna dig in. I'm gonna dig into that after the show too, because I really need like notes for these receivers to have like an opinion on which guys to like stack for DFS. And if that's a narrative and it's actually real, I would love that.
I know, right? Yeah, it would just be funny. Shakir, it's kind of the same thing, but I do think like the usage has been trending more and more in his favor lately. And I think he's the kind of guy that Josh Allen locks onto in these kinds of games, in these big games. So I just feel pretty good about him. I also think he and Keon Coleman could have some big play potential against the Chiefs. I hope that we don't get a lot of McDuffie on Shakir. That would scare me a little bit. And he's been shifting into the slot a little bit this year. So he's a little bit riskier. I might move him behind some of these guys that we feel good about. Let's hit our first break, 35 minutes in, and we'll get back. And I want to talk to you about Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, some of these guys that aren't getting enough respect. You know, they've been really good fantasy receivers, but we don't love the matchup this week. But we'll get to that right after our break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Okay, so wide receiver 29 is where I have Cortland Sutton on the road against the Houston Texans. We talked about this matchup earlier as it pertains to the quarterbacks. There's a number of things coming into play here. So I really think Pat Bryant is good and continues to play more, and we're seeing get some looks that I feel like typically would have gone to Sutton last year. And then also there's, of course, the emergence of Troy Franklin as a playmaker. And so now, instead of like just Marvin Mims, you've got two of these guys who are playmakers, can catch and run or can get downfield shots. There's more guys to go to in the backfield as well. And Evan Ingram is added to the equation. So like, it feels like there's just not quite as much focused target distribution here for Sutton. And obviously the matchup is tough, and there's the pressure factor. Like Houston's edge rushers right now are just on another level. And so that scares me too, that like Bo Nix is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL against pressure. And I don't know if he's going to have the time to like find Sutton down the field. Sutton is really, really good. This is no disrespect to him. And we've seen that he's been able to win in basically any cornerback matchup. But I would have a tough time putting him in a lineup unless I really felt like I needed access to some upside and some big broken plays and stuff like that, because I think he could easily give you like 3 points this week.
Yeah, no, I would pretty much echo all of that. Yeah, Troy Franklin, I believe more routes, more expected fantasy points than Sutton over each of the past 3 weeks, or over the past 3 weeks in total. Forget the exact stat, but yeah, like for perspective, for the entirety of last year, Sutton was the only receiver on the Broncos that was running more than 60% of the routes in like any game. So yeah, it's just a different offense at this point. I'm with you, and yeah, the matchup sucks.
Yeah. To Ryan's point, it was like just Sutton basically, and a bunch of guys just rotating in. But this year it's like, okay, we have actual guys that are like pieces of the offense that are working. Yeah. What do you think about Keenan Allen? You had some notes on the Chargers matchup here against Tennessee, right? Like probably going to have to run more, but if they do take to the air, do you prefer one of these secondary pieces over the others?
So what you just said there is like the biggest piece, which is last week, Keenan Allen played, I believe, exclusively in 3 wide receiver sets, and pretty much exclusively when they were throwing the ball. Like Keenan Allen was just not on the field when they were running. And that's a problem in a game script like this. He has been pretty good against cover 4 this year, which the Titans do play a lot of. But yeah, just like that weird like usage uncertainty kind of outstrips that for me. Oronde Gadsden has also been excellent against cover 4. So I would probably lean more toward him being the one to benefit, even though he also has like very stark run pass splits. I think they only ran the ball once from 11 personnel with Gadsden on the field last week. So yeah, honestly, both of those guys just scare me a little based on game scripts. But at least like the schematic coverage matchup for both of them should be beneficial to whatever extent the Chargers are dropping back.
Yeah. So I've got Allen in the same range as Sutton, where it's like he could give you a touchdown. He could give you 2 touchdowns. If the Chargers score 40 points this week, who knows like what they might do to the Titans. But I think what Ryan's bringing up is relevant and does scare me, where he could have that really low floor like Sutton. It's for different reasons, though. It's kind of like the Kyron Williams thing earlier, where it's like we just don't know how it'll go if this game turns into a blowout. And they have been very specific with the way that they're using their players lately. Like Trey Harris is coming in he's like only playing when it's a big jumbo set where there's lots of tight ends on the field and he's the only receiver. And so he's basically in there to block. And then like Keenan Allen comes off the field for those plays. I don't know how long they can get away with doing this, where it's like, this is a clear tell. We basically know exactly what you're doing. Like we talked about, Dan and I talked about that yesterday with Gadsden, how this might evolve. So I'm keeping an eye on that. But for this week, I am pretty nervous for that reason to start Keenan Allen or Quentin Johnson, who I have down here much, much lower. A couple guys in between them that I think are interesting, and you had some notes on. We'll start with Romeo Doubs. Has played well, has basically, been the steady presence in Green Bay in terms of the receivers all year long. I have him at wide receiver 32, just behind Sutton, Keenan Allen, and Jordan Addison, and just ahead of Alec Pierce, so I know you have notes on too. So talk about those two.
Yeah, so we'll start with Dobbs. For him, it's just a pure like schematic matchup thing where the Panthers play cover 3 at a top 3 rate. Dobbs has been pretty much the Packers' only answer against cover 3 this year. He sees a 13% boost to his targets per out run, 20% boost to his yards per out run. And he has over 55% of the team's air yards against cover 3. And that actually ranks 5th best among all wide receivers versus cover 3 this year, behind only Drake London, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, and Alec Pierce. So I'll transition to him here. The Steelers run, I believe, the 2nd most single high looks of any team in the NFL. And so the Colts do not see very much single high, or they haven't so far this year. But if that's what the Steelers are going to bring against them, Alec Pierce's numbers versus single high are hilarious. It's 29.5% target share. That's 7th best behind only guys that are named like Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, like those receivers. Yeah. That's where he is against single high. 4.3 yards per out run. That's close to 4x what he sees against too high.
Yeah.
Second best behind only Puka.
Yeah.
Leads the NFL in air yards per game against single high, despite, again, the Colts having faced it at the 4th lowest rate. So not a lot of plays against single high.
He leads the league
yards per game.
He leads the league in total air yards against single high, you're saying, even though he has not had that many reps against it, which makes sense. When you said 29.5% target share, I'm like, well, what the hell? Because his average depth of target is like 25 yards. So that's insane. That's got to be like 100 air yards per game easily, just against single high. All right, sorry.
He's in the 80s, I believe. No one else is above like the 60s. I tweeted it out yesterday. Yeah, it's hilarious. Also, the Steelers blitz a lot, and Pierce leads the team in target share and yards per out run against the blitz this year. Pierce is like the schematic matchup of any individual wide receiver that I absolutely feel the best about this week. Yeah. I would play him over Keenan Allen. I would play him over Jordan Addison. You can keep scrolling up, but I might keep playing him over.
I was gonna say, I think I'm just gonna move him up because like this game is expected to be fairly competitive too. I could see the Colts blowing them out. The Steelers defense has not been very good lately, but 3-point spread, and it's in Pittsburgh, right? Yeah.
3-point spread in Pittsburgh. Steelers are like the most extreme pass funnel in the NFL over the last 5 weeks.
Like
bottom
if it stays
3 and schedule adjusted allowed to wide receivers. Yeah, it's like this looks like a shootout to me, and Alec Pierce looks like the biggest beneficiary of that.
I liked the spot for him, but these numbers are nuts. And if it stays close, that where they're not just running all the time, it could be a massive game for him for sure. I assume he's probably one of the best DFS plays in your mind then, especially for like tournament play.
Yes. Yeah. He's, I just want to tell you what his ownership is now because it was very low yesterday. I'm hoping it's still very low in these projections. He's pacing for 3% ownership right now.
Oh my gosh.
At 4,600. So, yep. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I feel very confident in Alec Pierce.
I mean, you should never feel very confident in a player who has a 25-yard average depth of target.
Fair.
But
Let me rephrase. I'm very confident that he's an amazing play based on upside, salary, ownership, all of that. Those don't always work out for sure.
I love it.
But yeah.
Let's finish up here with the rankings, and we'll get to some more DFS stuff because I mean, just talking about this is getting me excited here. All right, so Pierce, I moved up to wide receiver 28, just behind Xavier Worthy, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Juwan Jennings. And there's obviously the upside for much more than that. Like, does Alec Pierce really profile that much differently than Marvin Harrison Jr., Nico Collins, T. Higgins? No, not really. Brian Thomas Jr., not really. So if you want to start him, if you need upside, this could be the highest scoring fantasy receiver this week. Like, that's absolutely within his range of outcomes, given what we've seen from the Steelers. I do think like it's maybe relevant Joey Porter Jr. is like the one player who's playing well on their defense. I feel like I don't want to say that for definitively, but like he's still playing pretty well. And that's who he's probably going to deal with the most, if I had to guess.
Yeah,
all right.
Most likely Ramsey in the slot. Yeah.
Oh, Trey Tucker.
Porter.
You had some Trey Tucker notes?
Yeah. I feel like every year we kind of get these receivers where they're these like outside deep threats. They will have like a 25-point performance one week. Everyone talks about them for like the next 2 or 3 weeks. It doesn't really happen again. We forget about them, and that's exactly when they pop up again. That like feels like this week for Trey Tucker to me. It mostly just a matchup thing. Jaguars allowing the second most receiving yards per game on the deep ball, second most schedule adjusted fantasy points to outside receivers, but the fewest to the slot. So that's just very much benefiting Trey Tucker, who's playing almost exclusively outside. We're probably getting Jacoby Myers back, but he's been at a 62% slot rate this year. Brock Bowers, of course, also primarily slot in line. So I think Tucker is kind of like a sneaky, like high upside flex play, could catch a couple long bombs this week, and the matchup sets up for that.
Yeah, I think there's a group here in my mind as I started these rankings that was like Alec Pierce down to like DJ Moore, Trey Tucker, Quentin Johnston, Jamison Williams, Keyshawn Boutte, and Keon Coleman. If Rashid Shaheed, you could throw into that too. I just don't know what his status is, but similar types of plays in terms of like high variance plays that could break in a big way. And I liked Tucker better than everybody from that group, basically, except for Alec Pierce. I had DJ Moore one spot ahead of him. Does that look about right, or would you be even more aggressive in moving him up this week?
I mean, I would play him over DJ Moore and Josh Downs and Chimere DK. I said that right? Just making sure.
I've heard it. I've heard Chimere DK as well.
Chimere, okay.
But I don't know.
DK,
yeah. He's pretty exciting. He's been all the rage on fantasy Twitter this week because we've got problems. We get real excited about things like Tennessee Titans round 4 receivers. But he's looked really good. Dan and I did rookie breakdown on the receivers yesterday. Receivers and tight ends that we think could be late season league winners for you among the rookies. So check that out if you did not see that episode. Speaking of such things, real quick, here's where I've got the Houston Texans receivers, assuming Nico Collins is back. That's wide receiver 53 for Jalen Knoll and wide receiver 59 for Jaden Higgins. I wish that we could get more playing time for Knoll because I think he's really good. But I do have them behind like the Green Bay receivers, Matthew Golden and Christian Watson, and a lot of these other guys that just I've got no idea what to do with them. Even like Rashad Bateman with Lamar Jackson back. Like I just don't feel much confidence. Like we've talked about, that CJ Stroud and the offense as at large is going to be able to facilitate the volume that's necessary against this Denver pass rush.
All right, let's also get Christian Kirk back this week, by the way. Just something
good
to have
call
on your radar. He was a limited on Wednesday, I believe.
Let's wrap up with tight end here. So you had some Sam Laporta notes, and I think that's relevant because I've got him at tight end 6, which actually felt too low to me. But that's 3 spots ahead of consensus. And I think it's just a reflection of tight end being really pretty strong this week. But still, I was surprised where he was at. I mean, the the Lions are expected to score a ton of points. We just saw this Minnesota defense get carved up by Rondé Gadsden. They're different types of players, of course. But you like the schematic matchup for Laporta here?
I do, yeah. So Vikings lead in too high and in blitz rate. Against too high this year, we've seen Laporta have a 60% higher target per out run, 2.41 yards per out run against too high, actually leads all qualifying tight ends. So yeah, and as you mentioned, we have seen tight ends have success against the Vikings in general this year. So I almost like Laporta maybe over a Jake Ferguson. That's maybe an overreaction to like the lowest target share Jake Ferguson has seen since he was a backup. So yeah, maybe don't listen to me on that. But yeah, I think it makes sense to have him over Gadsden this week, which might not be consensus.
Yeah, but you thought the cover 4 set up pretty decent for Gadsden as well. It's just kind of what we talked about earlier, where if they're running more, that's a little bit riskier, which could be the case for Laporta as well. I guess it's the reason, if I'm splitting hairs, it's just that I feel a little bit more reliable, dependable, the types of targets that we're getting from Laporta compared to the downfield looks for Gadsden, and we have a larger sample size of Laporta being a fantasy relevant player. Do you have any Brock Bowers thoughts as he makes his return apparently to the field at hopefully close to full health?
Yeah, I saw you and Jacob Sanderson going back and forth about this on Twitter a little bit. I think you should have faith, man. Like as the Brock Bowers preseason doubter, he's an awesome player. The offense did genuinely look good in week 1 when he was on the field in like a full capacity as opposed to an extremely hobbled capacity over the next few weeks. If he's like, the only thing is the health, right? We don't know for sure where he's at. My understanding from like the injury experts is they thought he would be close to 100% after whatever it's been, the 3-4 weeks of rest plus the bye. So I would feel pretty good about Bowers. I would probably not want to have him below even like a Gadsden and a Laporta, because this is a player that can just dunk on you so hard. But yeah,
which is the same for Gadsden.
I'd be very scared. That's fair. Honestly, all of them can, but like Bowers was so good, man. Like just like re-say everything you were saying to me all preseason about how freaking awesome Brock Bowers is. Like, yeah, they could have to throw in this game. Like, I think you should have more faith. Okay.
That's fair. I'm glad to hear it. I will say I'm unmoved. Colton Miller, I think, is a huge change. Like that he was there early in the year and he's not anymore. And then also I think Geno is like bottomed out. Like at the beginning of the year, at least he was like, I think, feeling himself a little bit and playing well. Not playing well. Well, he didn't play bad in week 1. It's not
That's
kind
of what I mean. Like, just when you have a Brock Bowers on the
that
field
helps.
that you can, yeah.
I just don't know, man. Like what I've seen from Geno is like so many mental mistakes in addition to the accuracy that seems to have like just fallen off. Like it kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins last year, but there's no explanation for it really. Like it doesn't look like the same guy. I want no part of it. Like, and then the other thing is, I mean, what are the Raiders like? 21 point implied total compared to, we're talking about the highest implied totals here with the Chargers and the Lions. Yeah, I'm fine starting Bowers if you have to. I'm starting him in a few spots, but like, I don't know that he's healthy. I hope that he is. And I don't know that the offense is going to put up more than 10 points. Maybe it will.
Yeah, I need to write myself a reminder note to make sure I take Bowers off IR in every single dynasty league where I have him. That's it. That's the worst, man. When you have like a player that's missed like 5 weeks or whatever, and you have maybe anyone that doesn't have like 25 plus lineups to set every week can't relate to this, but like just missing a guy that comes back the week he comes back in a lineup like that because he's way down on IR and you just don't see him as you quickly scroll through. That sucks.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else at tight end stand out to you? Behind Bowers, I have Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid facing each other. Kyle Pitts, don't mean to be low on him, but I am lower than consensus. Do you feel good about Pitts this week?
I mean, the role's been way better. That's all I've really got, though.
Yeah.
Nothing really on the matchup. I like the... Actually, it looks like you're at consensus on Colston Loveland, so maybe consensus is assuming Kmet's not back. I don't think it matters if Kmet is back either way, but I was kind of expecting to have to like cape up for him more if Kmet were back.
Alrighty, let's call it a day here with the rankings. Thanks as always, Ryan, for helping me get these sorted out. And we're going to finish up with some DFS thoughts. So I'm going to pull up DraftKings for the first time right now and let you talk about whatever the heck you want, Ryan.
All right, so we kind of hinted at like a few of these, but I can just kind of go through some of my favorite, mostly contrarian stacks for DFS this week. So the first one is going to be the Lions. We just talked about maybe they just run the ball the entire time. The Vikings aren't competitive, 8.5-point spread, all of that. But sometimes that's not what happens. Maybe JJ McCarthy's better than Vegas thinks, or maybe the Lions just want to embarrass a division rival. We have definitely seen that from Dan Campbell before, where they just never stop throwing the ball, even when they're up 5 scores. But we could get one of those performances this week when no one's on it. They have one of the highest implied totals on the slate. And as I kind of mentioned, the schematic matchup's really great. All the too high, all the blitzing from the Vikings. Jared Goff is the best in the NFL in terms of adjusted net yards per attempt against too high, top 4 in CPOE, top 4 in highly accurate throw rate. It's a game at home. Goff has very big home road splits over the past 3 seasons. He's up above 22 DraftKings fantasy points at home over that time frame. That would be 4th best among slate eligible QBs this week, over 26 points in 7 of 20 home games the last 3 seasons. So really like Goff. He also destroys the blitz. And the clear stacking partners for this are Sam Laporta, for the reasons we just talked about, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who gets up to a 38% target share against the blitz. 1.27 fantasy points per route run against the blitz, literally has more fantasy points than routes run against the blitz this year. So I like the idea of the Goff double. You would probably need to bring it back with a Justin Jefferson or another Viking just to say that they keep the game competitive. But that's an angle I'm interested in this week. You can give me thoughts on that, or I can move on to the next one.
For anybody who doesn't spend, a lot of time looking at per route data, a good fantasy point per route run rate is like 0.5 or something like that, so to be above 1 is just ludicrous. I like that. I had thought about this a little bit for DFS in terms of just like which games might fly under the radar, and I thought of this one actually, so I'm glad to hear you bring it up first. It does, like, if JJ McCarthy is able to play better than expected, I do feel like it could turn into more of a back and forth game here. And that's probably not likely, but I do think that possibility exists. And it feels like the sentiment on McCarthy is so bad that people are just going to be like, nah, this is just not a good game environment here. But I mean, the over-under is 49 points. Like that's pretty interesting. All right. So just real quick before we get any deeper into the weeds, I've seen a couple questions about Deebo Samuel, and I feel like we sort of just skipped over him. And so I just wanted to see if you had anything, because it's like no Terry McLaurin, potentially Jaden Daniels coming back. So the question here is like Bam Knight, Deebo Samuel, or Cortland Sutton. You can give your thoughts on that, or anything if you have anything on Deebo or the matchup. For me, it's basically I'm always scared off of Deebo when I don't know how healthy he is, and then the matchup is tough.
Yeah, no, I would play Bam Knight of all of those options, and I would echo similar thoughts to you, where I don't know where the Seahawks secondary is in terms of health right now. They were banged up. I don't know if their corners are expected to play this week, coming out of the bye, but that might affect my opinion. But I think either way, I would still lean Bam Knight.
Okay. I'm going to look into the injury report, and I'll give you an update if I find anything interesting. You can keep going with the DFS notes. For what it's worth, the over-under that game is 47.5 points. Washington, 3-point underdog. So we could see them passing a lot, and it could be a back and forth game potentially. Washington's defense has kind of struggled, and we know Seattle can put a lot of points up quickly. So it's interesting, and maybe I'm a little bit too low on Deebo. I'm much lower than consensus. But what else do you have for us on the DFS angles?
So what I really want to talk about with you is Drake May against this Falcons team. Really tough on paper matchup. Obviously, Tua kind of managed against them last week, but Falcons defense has been very good this year. but there are like enough schematic things here. There are like enough filters I can flip in the fantasy points data suite to where I've talked myself into Drake May being like the best DFS play on the slate. So I guess to like quickly go over why, the Falcons play the most cover three in the league. And they blitz at, I believe, the second most, definitely a top three rate. They specifically blitz from cover three on 22% of opposing dropbacks. That's by far the most in the league. The league average is like 10%. So more than double just cover three blitzes is what the Falcons do. Drake May has been insane against specifically the cover three blitz. He is at, let's see, I have so many like numbers and splits here that I want to make sure I
love this note
across.
I love this note. Drake has been so funny this year because like you can almost see it in his body language when he makes the check down throws and stuff like that. It's like, okay, like I will, and it's going well, and I guess I'll just be an MVP candidate here. He's been like following Josh McDaniels' instruction to a T, it feels like. And so when he gets a lot of these zone heavy schemes and stuff like that, and they're taking away the deep ball, he's totally willing to check down. But then when he gets these types of spots, it's like, all right, baby, here it is. It's time for me to get to be Drake May. And I just love that. And yeah, we've seen, like Ryan called it out last week, Miami, Tua Tagovailoa put up freaking 4 touchdowns against this blitz heavy defense. I think it's possible that offenses are finding ways to attack against what Atlanta is doing, which is unlike any defense in the NFL, what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So I found the splits. Drake May this season against the cover three blitz. He's at a 135.8 passer rating, 25% deep throw rate. So a quarter of his attempts against this have gone for 20 or more yards. 0.89 fantasy points per drop back. All three of those numbers easily lead all quarterbacks. Yeah, it's pretty insane. So I talked to like our film charters at Fantasy Points Data about this because anytime I get like multiple filters layered on top of filters deep, I need to like make sure that what I'm saying is actually real, that this is like a thing happening on the football field. It's not like just the numbers jumping out to me. Like I want to make sure it actually makes sense. And they largely thought so, right? So it's not necessarily that like the cover three blitz creates like deep shots, but if you have a quarterback like Drake May who's good against the blitz, can get it out on time, or when there are chances where he can create time either in the pocket or via scrambling and leaving the pocket, it can give like the outside receivers against cover three time and a chance to win deep, because it can turn into a kind of a one-on-one situation on the outside, depending on how the cover three is played. Like the most vivid example of this that people might remember would be in the Bills game in prime time when May like scrambled and hit Stephon Diggs out of structure for that play. That was against a cover three blitz. He had like 75 yards and a touchdown against it on like 5 dropbacks against the Saints. This is a lot of the May big plays have been against this, which is what the Falcons do more than any team in the league. So yeah, pretty interested in May. Kayshon Boutte, Stephon Diggs would be like the 2 stacking partners here to take advantage of that angle. So yeah, really fun stuff. We'll have a very long write-up on this in advanced matchups on Fantasy Points that people can check out if you're a Fantasy Points subscriber.
Love that. So I have May at QB4 behind only Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. As soon as I saw the matchup against, this really aggressive Falcons defense, I got pretty psyched. And so it's great to hear Ryan come through with all of the specific nitty-gritty data here. What did you say his fantasy points per dropback number was against cover 3 blitzes?
0.89.
0.89. So that's up from 0.62 in general. If it was like all other plays, not including the cover 3 blitzes, it's probably down in the 0.55 range if I had to guess. So that's a huge increase. His deep throw rate on the year is right at like 10%. You said it was 25%.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for this. I think it makes sense that it would be Kayshon Boutte, who's most likely to get a downfield strike here. I think he's looked really good. He's played really well lately. I like the spot here for both Patriots receivers. Alrighty, what else you got for us, Ryan? Are you bringing it back with anybody on the Atlanta side of things if you're trying to stack up this game?
I haven't put much thought into that. I don't think you necessarily have to.
Yeah.
But it honestly, it might be Kyle Pitts. Just I think he might project the best point per dollar of any of these Atlanta players. We don't know how healthy Drake London is, all of that. So yeah, maybe it is Kyle Pitts.
Interesting. What about Henderson? Would you consider going there if Ramondre were to miss?
Oh man, I feel like I just want to retire from talking about TreVeyon Henderson.
We don't even know if Ramondre's going to be out. We'll deal with that later. Sorry.
Probably not for DFS, as a flex play in seasonal league. Sure.
All righty. Sorry about that, buddy. By the way, the Seahawks defense seems to be healthy from what I'm seeing in terms of the secondary. Devon Witherspoon was on the injury report, but full practice on Wednesday. Unless I'm missing something, I'll look and see if there's any recent IR moves, but everybody seems to be there.
Yeah, Reek Woolen, I know, was banged up too, but yeah, it might be all set now. That's whenever these teams go on bye, I just mentally lose track of all the injuries and have to refresh myself. Yeah.
So that was about Washington there and if Deebo Samuel, what we're looking at there. I don't love the spot overall, but there's some upside for sure, especially if Deebo's healthier than we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. One other DFS angle I want to mention, which we already kind of did, was Alec Pierce. But it's not just Alec Pierce to me. It's also Daniel Jones is pretty interesting to just do a single stack there, or you can double with Tyler Warren or Pittman or whoever you want. But Daniel Jones leads all quarterbacks in yards per attempt and adjusted net yards per attempt against single high. His deep throw rate grows from 8% against two high to 12.8% against single high, which would rank top 10. And he's been also good against the blitz this year. So yeah, Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce, and then bring it back with a DK Metcalf just to lean into this game environment, I think is really solid and I don't think will be a popular angle from what we're seeing so far. And the last thing I wanted to say is Josh Allen is just insane in any game where he needs to be. So in games with a 50 or point or higher over under total, Allen averages 32.6 DraftKings fantasy points per game over the past 5 years. Over the past 3 years, that's at 34.9 DraftKings fantasy points per game. He's only failed to hit 30 4 out of 14 times over the last 5 years. So Allen looks like an amazing play to me. I think both him and Patrick Mahomes might get steamed in ownership. The early stuff I've seen is that more people will play Mahomes. But yeah, it's really just who do you stack him with, or do you even stack him at all? A lot of that production that I just mentioned was via rushing. He only went over 2 touchdowns in half of those 30-point games, I believe. 2 passing touchdowns, sorry. So it's not necessarily that you have to stack him. You could just play him naked with Chiefs bringbacks potentially. So yeah, I'm just kind of playing around with that. I don't know if you have any schematic takes on what the Chiefs are going to do against the Bills.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah, go for it.
Quarterbacks have run against the Chiefs a lot this year, and if you look at Allen in 2 spots against them last year had 23 rush attempts in those 2 games. So yeah, I the only quarterback who I have ranked above Allen this week is Lamar Jackson. I do think that he'll probably outscore Mahomes if I had to guess for fantasy.
Yeah, that would be my lean as well. So if we do get to Sunday morning and more people are playing Mahomes than Allen, I'm definitely going to play a lot of Allen. But yeah, schematically, I just don't really know what to do with this because Spags has played a ton of too high against the Bills historically. The Chiefs haven't played as much too high this year as in years past. So I don't know if they go back to that. Basically all of the Bills receivers have bad splits against too high over the last year or so. So I don't have a clear direction there. Maybe it'll be the Keon Coleman Xavier Worthy narrative. We will look into that right after the show. But yeah, that's just kind of where I run out of gas is who do you stack him with?
Allen in 4 games against the Chiefs over the past 2 years has 11, 12, 10, and 12 rush attempts. Has 3 4 rushing touchdowns in those games. Yeah, I think he's going to be a monster. I think that makes a lot of sense to build multiple lineups based around that. And you can, because of the rushing, you can go with just Josh Allen. You don't necessarily have to stack. But I also do think if I were stacking anyone with him, it would be Shakir. Keon Coleman is somebody you could consider too, but that's just like, how lucky do you feel? But
Yeah.
you know that he can give you the big games. I do think like the Chiefs cornerbacks are pretty physical and mean. So I don't know if this is necessarily the best spot for him to just like do his thing. But yeah, I would definitely go to Josh Allen though.
Sweet. And yeah, that is all I had for DFS takes in general. It should be a really fun week. If anyone is thinking about trying DFS for the first time, we have all of these games that are like very high totals. Should be a really fun slate, like way better than some of these gross ones we've got in the last couple weeks, where it'll be like one game with a 50-point total and everything else under like 44. So yeah, I'm particularly excited for this one.
How did last week shape up? Like every single game was a blowout. I didn't play DFS last week. I was traveling. Was it just a mess?
It was basically you needed to play 3 of like 4 running backs. If you had 3 of Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, you did amazing.
Yeah.
And it almost didn't matter like which team you stacked, because there were like 6 quarterbacks between like 24 and 26 fantasy points. So there were like a lot of ways to win, but you basically just needed like the 3 running back build with those 3 guys, because yeah, so many blowouts, so many like the Bijan Robinson was extremely chalky and did absolutely nothing. That was hilarious to watch. Not hilarious for me. I was at the field on Bijan, but yeah, it happens.
I was just kind of like keeping up with everything, but wasn't able to be as like locked in as normal on Sunday. And I was like, this seems like a pretty good week to have missed. But yeah, this one looks pretty fun. I think for the Chiefs, there's a bunch of different angles you could take in this Chiefs-Bills game at 325. I think if you're going with the Josh Allen stack, I would probably bring it back with more of the Chiefs pass catchers than like Kareem Hunt, who I think makes sense as a pretty good play. Just because like if it does turn into a big Kareem Hunt game where he's getting like 15 plus touches, that sounds gross to me. Where the Chiefs are kind of keeping the ball out of Allen's hands, which I think is ideally what they would like to do. But that doesn't have to be right. Kareem Hunt could also he could get there with 2 or 3 touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I can feel the Kareem Hunt 3 touchdown game coming. He's only 4,700. Like,
yeah,
I can feel that. Just like 10 carries, 3 of them at the goal line, 3 for 3 touchdowns, like 10 rushing yards on the day. Sounds about right to me.
yeah. So like, if you wanted to make lineups where you just fade Hunt and hope to like avoid that kind of outcome, because it'll probably be pretty freaking popular, I would guess, at this price. I think you could go like Allen if you want to stack somebody from the Bills with him. That's fine. But is it crazy to you to just go like Rice and Worthy or something like that with Allen?
No, I think that's totally viable. Might even be how I prefer. I don't know that Hunt will be popular. He's like pretty low in our ownership projections right now. He is very high in like our value. So maybe people come on to Kareem Hunt. He's just kind of like a gross player that people don't want to play though. So I'm not totally sure. But it'll depend on who all the podcasts tout over the next 48 hours will be how popular Kareem Hunt ends up. But if he's not, I think he's a good play just because he's leverage on that entire game.
Alrighty, good stuff, Ryan. Thank you so much for carrying today. Thank you so much for improving the backdrop there. Everybody is stoked, I think, to see that Ryan's got a rug. He got one piece of furniture. He promised us that he would have it, and he did. He comes through.
I did.
That's huge.
I loved all the comments about donating me furniture, about it looking like a porn set. Yeah, all that. Nobody's wrong. You're all right.
Oh man. All right. That was Mastering Matchups. Another big week here in the books. If you have any more start sit questions, I'll point you to the FFT newsletter again. And if you have any more like advanced matchup stuff you want to dig into, then Ryan, tell them where to find that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find my advanced matchups article over on fantasypoints.com. You need the premium or all-in subscription to access that. You can get that with matchups15. Use that promo code matchups15. That can also get you a discount off of the Fantasy Points data suite, which we showed off at a couple different points in the show today, and is where all of my numbers come from and where most of Jacob's numbers come from. So if you want to dig into it yourself, yeah, check out the Fantasy Points data suite, promo code matchups15. You can do that at data.fantasypoints.com.
Check it out. Great stuff in there. All right. Thank you all for being here. Please do like the video. If you have any questions, trade questions, or any fantasy questions about players or teams or whatever, leave us a review on Spotify or iTunes. We'll get to those and find any questions that we can help. We'll answer those on the show. We like to keep it interactive in that way. That's a lot easier for us to find those over the weekend than it is to try to get to all the different questions that come in the chat. But thanks everybody for being here and giving us the chat questions and everything too. For me, for Ryan, for producer Josh, Beyond the Box Score, Mastering Matchups. See you guys.